It started, as most extraordinary things do, in the most ordinary place imaginable, a quiet corner of Harbor Ridge Naval Hospital, just before sunrise, when the world was still rubbing sleep from its eyes. The hallways always smelled faintly of antiseptic and warm coffee, the kind brewed by overworked corpsmen trying to survive another shift. At that time of morning, only a handful of people moved through the pale fluorescent glow. A nurse pushing a supply cart. A night shift doctor stretching his back. And the janitor Evan mopping the same tiled floor he'd walked for 4 years. He didn't mind the routine. In fact, he liked the stillness. Life as a single dad rarely offered quiet moments, and the early shift meant he could finish work before picking up Mia from school. It also meant he crossed paths with the same people each day. The same tired smiles. The same polite nods, and the same young soldier. She appeared every morning like clockwork around 5:15 a.m. with her newborn baby strapped against her chest in a soft gray carrier. Sometimes the baby slept. Sometimes he fussed. But the soldier always looked exhausted, shoulders tight with a weight far heavier than the rucksack slung over her back. Her name was Harper. Evan only knew that because one morning he'd overheard a nurse greet her. Harper didn't talk much. She walked fast, kept her head low, and carried a silence around her like a shield. But she always paused, always, when she reached the double doors at the end of the hallway. They were heavy and stubborn, notorious for squeaking and resisting even strong pushes. Every morning, Evan would stop mopping, walk over, and push the doors open for her. Every morning, she nodded once in quiet thanks, and he offered a warm, tired smile in return. That became their routine. But on the 43rd morning, yes, Evan counted without ever meaning to, something shifted. Harper approached the doors like always, but her steps were slower, her eyelids heavier, her hands trembling just enough that he noticed. The baby was fussing, tiny fists waving as muffled cries escaped the carrier. Rough night? Evan asked softly, holding the door open. Harper hesitated. Usually she slipped past with barely a word. But today she paused in the doorway and exhaled shakily. He had colic, she murmured, bouncing the baby lightly. Didn't sleep more than 20 minutes at a time. Evan winced with sympathy. My daughter had it too. Thought I was going to lose my mind for a month straight. A flicker of something, relief maybe, or gratitude, crossed Harper's face. It feels like I'm doing everything wrong, she whispered, the words slipping out before she could take them back. You aren't, he said immediately. You're doing great. He's fed, warm, cared for, and you're here, even with no sleep. That's more than enough. For a moment, Harper just looked at him. Really looked at him. As though she'd been bracing herself against the world and found, unexpectedly, a place that didn't push back. The baby's cries quieted, and she nodded once, almost embarrassed. Thank you. After that day, their exchanges grew slightly longer. Never more than a few sentences, but enough that Evan noticed how her voice softened each morning, how her shoulders slowly untensed, how she seemed less alone. And he noticed other things too. How she limped sometimes. How she winced when lifting the rucksack. How she kept pressing the side of her ribs when she thought no one was watching. He'd seen that kind of pain before, not physical, or not only physical. The kind that came from trying to hold yourself together with nothing but stubbornness and hope. One morning, she was running late. Evan checked the clock, 5:17, 5:18, 5:19. She'd never been late before. He mopped the same corner 3 times, pretending he wasn't waiting. Then he heard hurried steps. Harper came around the corner, breathless, eyes red like she'd been crying. The baby was squirming unhappily, his blanket half falling off. She kept fumbling with it, but her fingers were shaking too badly. Hey, Evan said gently, stepping closer. Here, let me. He didn't touch the baby, he knew better than to assume, but he lifted the fallen blanket and draped it securely. Harper didn't pull away. Actually, she looked like she might collapse from relief. I'm sorry, she whispered, wiping her cheek quickly. I'm really sorry. I'm just late. Everything went wrong this morning. It's okay, he said. Happens to everyone. Not to soldiers, she muttered. He raised an eyebrow. Last I checked, soldiers are human too. That made her let out a small, involuntary laugh. The first he'd heard from her. It was quiet, but real, and something about hearing it made warmth spread in his chest. What happened? He asked gently as they walked toward the double doors. Harper swallowed. The baby woke up screaming at 3. He wouldn't settle. I had to be here for medical evaluation at 5. I was supposed to leave him at the daycare downstairs, but I couldn't calm him long enough to get everything ready. I almost missed the appointment. You didn't, Evan said. You're here. She nodded, brushing a hand over the baby's head. I'm trying. You're doing more than trying. You're showing up. That counts. She didn't respond, but he saw the way her eyes softened over the next weeks. Helping Harper became second nature. He carried her rucksack when her hands were full. He heated bottles in the staff lounge when she arrived flustered. He stayed with the baby for 2 minutes, never more, when she had to sign in or find a corpsman. Nothing dramatic. Nothing heroic. Just small acts that added up in ways Harper never said aloud but couldn't hide in her grateful, exhausted gaze. Evan never asked about her past. He figured if she wanted to share, she would. But sometimes she let things slip. A mention of deployment. A wince when someone shouted down the hall. A haunted look when she talked about returning to duty. One morning, she surprised him by asking, "Do you ever get used to being alone?" He paused mid-mop. "No," he said honestly. "But you learn to carry it differently." She stood there for a long moment, clutching her baby like he was the only thing tethering her to the earth. "I'm not used to it yet," she whispered. "You will be," he said. "And you won't always be as alone as you think." Her eyes glistened. She looked away before tears could fall. Days passed. And slowly, without either of them noticing at first, their routine became something more than coincidence. Evan started keeping an extra bottle of water ready for her. Harper started bringing him a cup of coffee from the hospital cafe, always black with 1 sugar, because she'd noticed, once, when the baby grabbed Evan's finger with surprising strength, Harper blushed like she'd been caught doing something intimate. "He likes you," she murmured. "Babies like everyone who's not stressing them out," Evan joked, but the truth was, the baby did seem calmer with him. Maybe because he didn't rush. Maybe because he'd spent years raising his own daughter alone, learning patience the hard way. Or maybe because Harper's walls lowered a little every time Evan smiled at her. Then came the morning everything changed. Harper didn't show up. At first, Evan assumed she was late again. But minutes ticked by. The hallway remained quiet. The double doors never squeaked open. By 5:30 a.m., unease tugged at his chest. By 5:45, it became worry. By 6 o'clock, he was gripping his mop handle too tightly, scanning the hallway as if willing her to appear. He didn't see her the next day either, nor the day after that. By the 4th day, he couldn't sleep. He kept imagining her struggling alone, the baby crying, something wrong, something dangerous. He knew he had no right to interfere. He was just a janitor, and she was a soldier with a life far more complicated than anything he was part of. But he cared more than he should, more than he expected. On the 5th morning, she finally returned, but she wasn't alone. Walking beside her was a woman in full Navy dress uniform, bearing the unmistakable silver stars of a high-ranking officer. Her posture was straight, confident, unquestionably commanding. Her expression was sharp enough to cut steel. Admiral. Evan froze where he stood. The Admiral's voice carried down the hall, crisp and authoritative. "Harper, you should have told me. You should have come to me sooner." Harper looked small beside her. "I didn't want to be a burden." "You're my daughter," the Admiral snapped, not in anger, but in the kind of fierce protectiveness that left no room for argument. Evan's mop clattered quietly against the floor. He stared at Harper. The soldier he'd helped every morning was the Admiral's daughter?